Namaskar and welcome to this special broadcast on DD India. India and Trinidad and Tobago, ties of trust, time and tradition. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. In the second leg of his five-nation visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is about to reach Trinidad and Tobago. This is his first visit to Trinidad and Tobago as Prime Minister and the first bilateral prime ministerial visit from India since 1999. In this special presentation, we track the updates from the Caribbean nation and put Prime Minister Modi's historic visit in perspective. Let's begin. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is en route to Trinidad and Tobago in the second leg of his five-nation visit. India shares deep-rooted historical, cultural and people-to-people connect with this Caribbean nation. Prime Minister Modi will meet the President and Prime Minister of the twin island nation who have recently assumed office for the second term. DD India correspondent Akshay Dongre gets us more.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will arrive in Trinidad and Tobago on July 3rd for a landmark two-day official visit, his first ever to the Caribbean nation as Prime Minister and the first at this level since 1999. This visit, at the invitation of Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, comes at a time when India is actively expanding its global footprint through partnerships rooted in culture, commerce and cooperation. With over 40% of Trinidad and Tobago's population being of Indian descent, the emotional and cultural resonance of this visit is immense. The Indian diaspora, some tracing their roots back 5 generations, continues to play a vital role in the country's social and economic fabric. Trinidad and Tobago is also home to a growing number of first-generation Indian entrepreneurs, many of whom see this visit as a chance to boost trade and investment between the two nations.
Prime Minister Modi, I think, is one of the more admired leaders in the world. I think we as Indians are very happy with the progress that we see India making. The people of Trinidad, the Indian people in Trinidad, have always identified very closely with their Indian culture. It's going to strengthen the ties, I think, and I think people are going to identify with it, and I think it will probably push it even further.
The country is very happy to have a visit like him, such a high-profile visit, and it's something that I think a lot of bilateral talks can happen and a lot of trade that can happen for this country, and it could benefit a lot for this country as well, and not only for Trinidad, Tobago, but for the rest of the Caribbean islands as well, and it'll be something that it's a good thing.
Ahead of the visit, the Indian High Commissioner to Trinidad and Tobago says the mood in the country is one of excitement and pride.
Visit of Prime Minister Modi ji has been long awaited, as I said. All along in the country, among people, among government, there is a great excitement. They have actually announced a holiday after certain hours on that day. So everyone is looking forward to this.
During his stay, Prime Minister Modi is expected to hold high-level talks with both President Christine Carla Kangalu and Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar. He will also address a special joint session of Parliament, underscoring the importance of this partnership rooted in shared democratic values and historic ties.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Trinidad and Tobago is not just a diplomatic event, it's also a celebration of a people that came to this land 180 years back as indentured laborers and through resilience, strength and endurance have shaped their destiny to become entrepreneurs, policymakers and leaders of this country. With camera person Mohit Uike at Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago, Akshay Dongre, DD India.
Let's now delve deeper into India's relations with the Caribbean nation. Let me welcome Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, former senior diplomat who is joining us now. Ambassador Wadhwa, welcome to this special presentation and program on DD India. Your thoughts, your reflection on the first visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Trinidad Tobago. How do you look at the significance of this visit?
Well, given the fact that it's one of the first prime ministerial visit after 1999 itself is very significant. I'm glad that the Prime Minister has found this opportunity to visit this country, which is fast becoming a very important gateway for India into the whole of the Caribbean. and also because it now throws up some new opportunities which did not exist some years ago. All in all, it's a very significant visit. It's going to lead to some long-term consequences and results. And the diaspora, I'm sure, is very excited about it. Again, as we just heard in your report, there is a substantial number of the diaspora in Trinidad and Tobago, 40 to 45% of this 1.6 million people who live in this country. A very beautiful country, full of natural resources, oil and natural gas, and in addition to that, now looking at new opportunities like new and renewable energy.
And the focus that is there on the diaspora, as you mentioned, so about 40% of the population, we understand, is of Indian descent. What kind of diaspora-driven diplomacy does it give rise to? How does it characterize the kind of engagement that the two nations have with one another?
Well, the fact that the diaspora from India has been there for a number of years now, because starting from 1845, when the ship Fatel Razak landed in Trinidad and Tobago, after that, a total of 143,000 indentured labor from India have entered this country, and now the descendants have obviously they're forming a majority in the country, and therefore we have a situation where Trinidad and Tobago is one of the few countries in the world where Indian diaspora can actually drive politics of the country, provided they work together and provided all the groups come together. And this is exactly what has happened in this country. So today you have an Indian origin prime minister, Indian origin president, both of whom are women, and both of whom have received the Prasar Bharati Samman Award. And of course, the diaspora is now become the medium of entry of Indian companies into this country because of the cultural linkage, of course, and the ease of doing business with people who understand each other. The Caribbean, because of the CARICOM free trade agreement, being Trinidad, along with Guyana, where the Prime Minister also visited last, these are two countries in the region which will become the hub for Indian companies entering into the region for business and investment.
Right. A little more on that, sir. The significance of India's engagement with the Caribbean region and particularly Trinidad and Tobago, the significance that it carries in multiple domains. You mentioned trade. It's like a strategic gateway into the Caribbean for India. How do you look at it in the broader perspective, the domains where India could engage in further?
Well, so right now, for example, the main engagement is in energy, so oil and natural gas. But the country is emerging as a very important source of diversified resources for India, because the Indian consumption of oil and natural gas is only going to go up in the future. All projections point to that. And so it would be best if Indian companies could invest in this country. It's got a very good infrastructure. It's also got natural resources which have lasted for a long period of time. And at the same time, it needs Indian pharmaceuticals, tertiary care. There are opportunities in renewable energy and in agriculture, as well as Indian innovation. So Indian innovation means that the whole digital stack, which India is now famous for all over the world, is something that the country desires, and it would be a good model to follow for Trinidad and Tobago, because it's had successes elsewhere. So there are a number of opportunities which have arisen ahead of this visit.
Right, and if you look at Prime Minister's five-nation visits, first stop Ghana, and now we're looking at the Caribbean nation. We're looking at important nations of the global south that Prime Minister has chosen for this visit. So in that larger perspective, India's deeper engagement with the global south taking place with Prime Minister's historic five-nation visit.
And I think there are two or three important trends which one can discern from the visit of these five nations this time. One is, of course, the engagement with Africa and therefore the global South, which is being strengthened. Secondly, is the quest for entering into MOUs in mining and critical minerals, which has become very important for India. And third is India's energy security, which you can see during this visit for Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, it will emerge as an important aspect. Fourth is the issue of defense cooperation with a number of countries of the global south. We saw that already in Ghana, and we're going to also see it, play out in countries like Namibia when the next visit takes place. We're also looking at a very important aspect of the demand from these countries for Indian pharmaceuticals and vaccines and agriculture machinery. Here there are opportunities which are there for Indian companies to exploit, and they would be Indian companies would be much better off if they have a presence, if they invest in these countries, and therefore it will be a win-win situation for both.
Right. I want to return to the kind of significance that the Indian diaspora occupies in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's talk about the leadership. You mentioned, of course, about President Christine Kala Kangalu and Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, both Indian origin women, President and Prime Minister, actively also engaged in and awarded at the Prasar Bharati Samman. So in that sense, it talks volumes about the manner in which the Indian diaspora has been able to capitalize and achieve great success in the political domain, for one, in this island nation.
Exactly, and I think it's important that the Indian diaspora is united, and if they work together, which is a classic case which has happened in Trinidad and Tobago, there is no way that they can lose elections because they are, their numbers they actually outnumber any other kind of community which is present in this country. So the key here is to have similar kind of policies, similar kind of thinking, and that is exactly what has happened. And therefore, we have now today a situation where both Prime Minister and the President are of Indian origin in this country.
Right, and Prime Minister in his departure statement earlier also spoke about the deep cultural ties, people-to-people connect, and he gave reference to the Prasar Bharati program as well, where he had an opportunity to engage with the leadership. So in that sense, it will be interesting to see how that engagement is taken forward. There's an important diaspora program that is also lined up during Prime Minister's visit here, sir.
Yes, that's right. And it's a very famous venue. In fact, the National Cycling Velodrome, yes, which is quite famous because it's the number of events have been held there in the past as well. And it's here that the diaspora is going to meet the Prime Minister. I'm sure he's looking forward to meeting them as well. And, essentially talking to them about how Trinidad and Tobago has assumed importance as far as India is concerned and how the relationship will be taken forward. And I'm sure, like at any other place the Prime Minister does, as is his forte, he will appeal to the people who are present there to act or to continue to act as brand ambassadors of India while they're living in another country.
Right. Let me also here welcome our second guest, Professor Rahul Mishra from School of International Studies, JNU, who is joining us in this special presentation. Professor Mishra, welcome to DD India. Your thoughts first on, it's the first prime ministerial engagement from India with the Caribbean nation in about 2 decades. How do you read its significance?
It's a very significant movement, a landmark, because not only this provides an opportunity to connect or reconnect rather with the Indian community in Trinidad and Tobago, but also to revitalize India's outreach in the Caribbean region. India has had a good presence in the region through trade and commerce and non-traditional and traditional security ties, but they were more or less confined to second-tier engagement. This provides an opportunity for India to engage with the region through Trinidad and Tobago on a number of issues. We know that COVID-19 pandemic affected this partnership that India had with the region because of limited connectivity and distance and so many other factors. India's engagement was somewhat limited during the pandemic era. So this is now a time to revitalize the relationship on number of factors: energy cooperation, economic and trade cooperation, investments, people to people connect, and I think also India playing a more positive role in influencing or rather encouraging the Indian community to engage more directly and more confidently with India and contribute to India's rise and vice versa.
Right, Professor Mishra, also we'll talk about each of these aspects, but there's a great interest in the manner in which India's diaspora has been in particular being able to achieve great success in the twin island Caribbean nation. Give us a picture of the manner in which these ancestral ties have evolved into modern partnership in the 21st century. How has that trajectory been?
Well, India's traditional approach to diaspora, starting from independence era, was that we do not engage or indulge in the domestic politics of any of our partner countries where our diaspora has a significant presence. Things started changing with greater engagement, diaspora becoming a part of India's foreign policy, and therefore greater engagement with launch of the Prasar Bharati Divas, and greater engagement with the people of Indian origin. We've also started celebrating the contributions that Indian community has made to countries across the world. And this also is an opportunity for India to revisit the past and see how, well, it was in many cases unfortunate, including in Trinidad and Tobago, how the Girmitia people, the Indians who went there to these countries, whether it is Pacific or the Caribbean or the Indian Ocean region, and worked as indentured labor. So revisiting the past, understanding that colonialism and exploitation of poorer countries at the hands of colonial masters was a very negative chapter in India's history and the global history. But now learning a lesson from that and building positive partnerships, contributing to mutual growth and prosperity with the engagement of Indians abroad, India playing a role there. Capacity building, for example, is a very important role player there. But also India has been positively contributing in also making sure that the idea of India, India's historical contribution, the cultural heritage that India has, is also celebrated. And India does that through the Know India program, for example, and number of initiatives that the Ministry of External Affairs has taken. So relinking with the diaspora, telling them who we are and how we are all connected through history, culture, and our historical past, cultural past, our same roots, as it were, that goes back to past more than a millennia. And all of this then contributing to the rise of India, the Indian community, not a way in which China sees it, but in a more positive culture and civilizational oriented approach. So far as the developments in any of these countries where Indian community has a strong presence, whether it is Trinidad and Tobago or Malaysia or Fiji, India has not played any direct role in shaping, influencing policy making. But what India could do is perhaps playing a more direct role in building economic capacities of the Indian community people, economic capacities, their knowledge capacities, making them more aware of what is happening, but also at the same time providing more scholarships maybe to these Indian community people at India's engineering and medical institutions, also advanced AI and IT sector areas. So in a way, building capacities so that when these young students from these countries go back to their home country, they not only celebrate India, but also contribute to their countries and play a more important role in shaping their own country's political economic future. I think that would building capacities and revisiting our past, learning from them and contributing to the building of greater, stronger ties is perhaps something that India and all these countries that have strong Indian community presence could do together.
Right.
And this
In
will
fact,
also contribute to
India's
Prime Minister
development
Modi's idea
partnerships.
of Viksit Bharat by 2047, because
Yes.
India cannot become a developed nation all by itself. It needs its own people,
Right.
people who are connected to India in a number of ways.
A celebration of those diaspora ties and the development partnership that you were talking about. We saw an example of it play out in Ghana. All eyes now on Trinidad and Tobago. We continue our conversation. Let's reflect on some updates that have come in so far. Former Minister of Industry, Enterprise and Tourism of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Bhoinder Dutt Tiwari, spoke exclusively to DD India about how the Indian diaspora there celebrates the diversity.
We have all manner of people from the Middle East, from Europe, from the Americas in this country. So we also celebrate our Indianness, our Indian civilization, but we also celebrate diversity. We have a lot of respect for diversity and multiracial and tolerance and existence with each other. And we look forward to a better world. And we see no better place to start than with good relations with India as a beginning, and connecting with India, the African continent, South America, Latin America. Those are good things, I think, and creating opportunities for the developing world.
And Dr. Bhoinder Dutt Tiwari also spoke of Trinidad and Tobago's willingness to work with India on sustainable development strategies, especially for small states and islands.
India is playing an important role and playing an important role in the development in the developing world. And I think she's playing a leadership role. And we would be happy to work with India, I think, as an island state, as a small island state, as you mentioned, on sustainable development strategies, especially for small states and island states.
And we continue our conversation with Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, former senior diplomat, and Professor Rahul Mishra from JNU. Ambassador Wadhwa, we understand this is the second visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to a Caribbean nation in a very short while. Last November, in fact, he was in Guyana. Talks volumes about the kind of importance that India ascribes with its engagements with the Caribbean region.
Yes, so as I was mentioning earlier, I think the region has become extremely important for India, given the fact that there are new opportunities that have arisen in the region. And these two countries, Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago in particular, are important gateways to the entire region. Trinidad and Tobago in particular, because it's, first of all, because it's got the free trade agreement with the rest of the countries of the region. So any Indian company which is investing or has a presence here will obviously have access to the entire regional trade. Secondly, from the long-term perspective, we have new opportunities that have come up now. Today, for example, early morning, I was listening to the Foreign Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Sobers, where he was talking about how they're looking forward to this visit in order to drive benefit from digital technologies, artificial intelligence, and the whole governance process and the substack of digital governance as far as India is concerned, because it's been a successful model which has worked very well in other countries, and they would like to borrow this as well. From the Indian perspective, of course, there are new opportunities besides oil and gas investments into new areas like renewable energy, agriculture and agricultural equipment, tertiary care, and pharmaceuticals. And these have existed for a while, but at the moment, because of the opening up of the country to India in a very big way, there would be much more investments that the Indian companies would be looking forward to. And also, along with that, India is looking to Trinidad for sports and sports technologies, because if India is to play a bigger role going forward, on the world stage in sports, then Trinidad is an extremely important country for athletics, as we all know. Small country, but it's produced some excellent athletes in the past. They're world winners and champions. And also the fact that we have, Indian investments which have done well in Guyana, and that could be replicated in Trinidad as well.
Right, there's a particular point about sports, Ambassador Wadhwa. Cricket also a common link between India and what is referred to as the Caribbean West Indies.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's been there for a very, very long time. And the Calypso, which has been written in the past, as you know, for our own cricketers like Mr. Gavaskar, they're still very famous. The singers like Ricky Jay, for instance, become very famous in India also in the past.
Right. Professor Rahul Mishra, just to understand the significance of Trinidad Tobago in the larger Caribbean region and also the CARICOM region, the political and economic grouping that the Caribbean nation forms, what significance does this twin island nation occupy in it? Professor Mishra, if I can bring that question to you.
Well, Trinidad and Tobago, of course, is one of the leading economies in the region, in the CARICOM as a multilateral grouping, but also in the Caribbean region. It is a high-income country, closely aligned with the U.S., is one of the leading economies when it comes to contributing to overall growth of the region. So partnering with Trinidad and Tobago is, of course, a very important factor, or can be a very important contributor in India's engagement with CARICOM as well as the Caribbean region. I think energy security is a very important aspect going forward in India Trinidad and Tobago relationship. India's energy security plans, as we are experiencing turbulence in the Middle East region, India must go out to other parts of the world, centers that are regional centers that are not conventionally included as part of energy security, energy supplies. So Caribbean, and if I include Venezuela, can be a very important partner in that. That is regarding the traditional security, but non-traditional energy supplies, but non-traditional sources. Renewable energy is another very important segment where, whether it is wind or hydro energy, Trinidad and Tobago and India can work together. Indian investments in the energy sector can boost both India's energy security endeavors, but also build the relationship on a stronger footing. So I think partnering with Trinidad and Tobago is a very important component. And if India sustains its focus on the Caribbean region and CARICOM, partnering with Trinidad and Tobago would be an essential component of that.
Right. Ambassador Wadhwa, when you were enumerating the areas of engagement between India and Trinidad and Tobago, one of the areas that the former minister spoke about was sustainable development, especially the concerns of the small island nations with climate change and other disasters. Partnership with India could play a crucial role.
Absolutely, he's quite right there, because India has been very active as far as SIDS countries are concerned, the Pacific Island states are concerned, and in New York, our mission has been particularly responsive to the needs of the small island states, because it's an important grouping within the United Nations system. All of them, of course, have one very important vote individually on any issue in the United Nations, especially the United Nations General Assembly. They play a very important role, and they all vote as a bloc, which is extremely important to remember as well. So for them, sustainability is the main issue, and also mitigation is a very important issue. Why? Because most of them are suffering from the threat. There's a looming threat which they face of inundation from the sea due to climate change. So obviously they would be looking forward to countries which take the lead in this respect, which are also paying attention to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and also helping them with development finance, mitigation finance, etc. So there, Trinidad is quite aware of India's role, and that is what the minister was referring to when he said that we need to develop our own strategies in tandem with India as to what are the areas to explore, what is the policy to be adapted, and how to carry other countries together in this endeavor. Remember that India has emerged as a very important voice of the global south, not just as far as Africa is concerned, but also for the small island states is concerned. So therefore, this sentiment it gels with that general thinking which is there on the part of the small island developing states.
Right. Professor Rahul Mishra, in moments from now, we should have visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi having reached Trinidad and Tobago. This point about the significance of the visit from the perspective of India's engagement with the nations of the Global South. Prime Minister Modi has been very vocal about climate justice for Global South and all the elements that it involves. So from that perspective, the comments that came in earlier about the role that smaller islands can play in closer engagement with India in this domain could be significant.
Indeed, India's engagement with the countries, the small island countries across the global south, has been a very important component of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy and India's strategy over the past 11 years. We've seen that a number of initiatives have been taken. Ambassador mentioned the Pacific Island countries. With Pacific Island countries, we have what is called as FIPIC. With the Caribbean countries, with the CARICOM countries, India held its first summit, India CARICOM summit in 2019. And these summits were driven by this idea that climate change and climate mitigation issues are important, climate justice is important, looking at sustainable development, but also capacity building in dealing with non-traditional security threats is something that India and these small island countries of Global South have to work together on. So I think reaching out to partners from Global South, especially the small island developing nations across the Pacific to the Caribbean in the Indian Ocean region is a good attempt on two counts. One, that it will consolidate the Global South, a common Global South voice in presenting its case at the global forums, including at the United Nations, but also India's attempt to show its solidarity on issues of climate change that look to the smaller countries that look, India is not just another rising power or a superpower in making. Our approach to climate change, our approach to sustainable development, our approach to climate justice is different. And we are with you on when it comes to issues of survival of your country in the long run and your well-being of your people. So I think this initiative, as you rightly mentioned, should be seen in the wider context of India's leadership role in the Global South and also India's very smartly designed and implemented attempts to reach out to smaller developing island nations from across the globe.
And we continue our conversation, but let's reflect on an important story that has come in. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Trinidad and Tobago, we look back at a profound tale of resilience. 180 years since Indian indentured labourers, also known as Girmitias, first set foot here. Our story traces their journey from colonial hardship to becoming pillars of this nation's identity.
On the 30th of May 1845, the Fatal Razak arrived in Trinidad carrying 225 Indian indentured labourers, or Girmitias, the dawn of a transformative chapter in the twin island nation's history. 1845, the Fatal Razak arrives in Trinidad and Tobago with 225 Indians. 1845 to 1917, 143,939 indentured labourers landed in Trinidad and Tobago. 1902, over half of sugarcane farming managed by Indians. 1962, diplomatic ties formalized post-independence. 2025, Indian Trinidadians and Tobagonians form 42% of the population. Over 180 years, the Indian diaspora preserved its culture, built thriving communities, and now stands proudly at the nation's helm, with Indian origin Kamala Persad-Bissessar as Prime Minister of the nation. Clearly, though the Indian diaspora in Trinidad and Tobago had a hard landing on the nation's shores, it has weathered many a storm to emerge at the top of its society.
Primarily, our forefathers came from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and they brought with them a lot of folk traditions, including their Ramcharitamanas, which is still hugely popular here in Trinidad and Tobago. Our forefathers were simple but profound persons. They were simple in the skills that they came with, but they were very profound in the value system that they came with.
Earlier this year, Prime Minister Modi, speaking in Mauritius on the Girmitiyas or indentured laborers, recounted the hardships of the community and how, despite the difficulties, the Girmitiyas kept their culture alive.
आपको जानकर खुशी होगी कि भारत सरकार गिरमिटिया साथियों का एक डेटाबेस बनाने पर काम कर रहा है। मॉरिशस और गिरमिटिया कम्युनिटी से जुड़े अन्य देशों के साथ मिलकर भारत इंडेंचर्ड लेबर रूट्स अंकित करने पर भी काम करेगा।
This year, the Indian diaspora in Trinidad and Tobago is celebrating 180 years of the first indentured laborers landing in the nation.
Well, geographically, India and Trinidad and Tobago are thousands of miles apart. Culturally, they're as close as two countries can be together. And that is due to the living bridge of Indian diaspora that resides here, that has built this country and now comprise about 40% of the total population of this Caribbean country. And this unprecedented and historic visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to bring the two countries even closer together, economically, culturally, and in several other aspects of society. And this is also going to write a new chapter in the ties between the two beautiful nations. With camera person Modoiki, Akshay Dongre, DD India.
Shared history of Girmitiyas between India and the Caribbean nation. Ambassador Wadhwa, we once again return to the diaspora question, this very special bond of ancestry and kinship. What kind of imprint does it leave on modern diplomacy between nations?
Look, as far as the diaspora is concerned, they are being used more and more in our foreign policy to establish or re-establish linkages with those countries where they are present. In countries where they are present in larger number, of course, it becomes very important to do that. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a case in point, 42% of the population are of Indian origin or descent. And not only that, as we were discussing earlier, both the Prime Minister and the President of this country are now, people who are of Indian descent. So that's an important aspect which compels us as India, as a nation, to make sure that the diaspora is used to strengthen ties, especially economic and investment ties. And of course, in this case, because the Indian diasporas were united and they have therefore come to power because of that unity, it also gives us an opportunity to strengthen the political linkages. And here the Indian community and people of Indian descent are in a position to drive policy. So they will be able to steer the country's direction in favor of their mother country, which is India in this case. So they must be used for that purpose, because otherwise we will be missing out an opportunity here. And of course, in other countries where they're in smaller numbers, there again they become a very important link. And over the past decade or so, we've seen how the government and the Ministry of External Affairs in particular has been using Indian diaspora abroad to further the relationship with all countries concerned, wherever they are present.
Right, we are on standby now. Any moment, we should be getting updates from Port of Spain, capital of Trinidad and Tobago, about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival in the capital of the Caribbean island. Professor Rahul Mishra, this point about the engagement with diaspora, but before that, we now look at the arrival shots of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. the second leg of his five-nation visit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Trinidad and Tobago, Port of Spain. The capital is where Prime Minister has landed, and those are, in fact, visuals coming in from the airport. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Port of Spain, and in those visuals, in fact, Prime Minister being received by the Prime Minister of the Caribbean nation, Trinidad and Tobago, a special honor, Prime Minister of Tobago and Trinidad. That's Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar receiving Prime Minister Narendra Modi in person as Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Port of Spain. That's the capital of the Caribbean nation. Ambassador Anil Wadhwa continues to be with us along with Professor Rahul Mishra. Ambassador Wadhwa, there we see Prime Minister of the Caribbean nation there to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his maiden visit, an important gesture there.
Definitely. It is a very important gesture, and coming herself to the airport to receive the Prime Minister, it just goes to show how much regard there is in this country for India and for the Indian Prime Minister while he's visiting there.
That's right. And Professor Rahul Mishra, your thoughts earlier, we saw in Ghana, President of the nation was there at the airport to receive Prime Minister, and now Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar also present in person to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Important gesture of warmth and speaks volumes about the relations that the two nations share.
Absolutely. It also shows the love and affection that people of Trinidad and Tobago and the political leadership have for India and Prime Minister Modi.
And those visuals,
Professor
Rahul Mishra, let me just inform our viewers, those visuals just came in a short while ago. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Trinidad and Tobago. There in the visuals, Prime Minister being received by Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar of the twin Caribbean island nation. This is the second leg of Prime Minister Modi's five-nation visit. Youngsters and officials all come together at the airport to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. An important gesture there. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar of the Caribbean island nation present in person to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his maiden visit to Trinidad and Tobago. This is the second leg of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's five-nation visit, Port of Spain, capital, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed. It's a historic visit to Trinidad and Tobago. For Prime Minister Modi, it's the maiden visit as Prime Minister. And this is since 1999, was when the last Prime Ministerial visit from India had taken place to the Caribbean island nation. The second leg of Prime Minister's five-nation visit has begun with Prime Minister's arrival at Port of Spain, capital of Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar of Trinidad and Tobago present in person to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Professor Rahul Mishra, the point that you were making about these high-profile welcomes with presidents and prime ministers being present in person to receive the leader from India speaks volumes about India's stature and also the ties that the leaders share among them.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the trend, the way Prime Minister Modi has been received by leaders across the world, I think soon it will become a part of the protocol that he is received by the top political leadership. Generally, it is just the sometimes the foreign minister or a minister who receives visiting prime minister or president. But things are changing, and it shows as I mentioned earlier, the affection that people have for India, political leaders across the world have for India, and especially those countries that have very strong ties with India, with the people of India. So community linkages, political and diplomatic linkages, the long-standing relationship, all of this have been playing a very important role. And this also tells us that countries like Trinidad and Tobago or Ghana have very profound hopes for India to play a more important role in shaping the international economic and diplomatic system, and at the same time represent them as the voice of the global South. in case of Trinidad and Tobago, the community feeling, of course, is a very important one. And one can imagine how Prime Minister Bissessar must be feeling, welcoming the Indian Prime Minister. So this must be a proud moment for the Indian community to meet the Indian Prime Minister. I think this is very warm and symbolically very important gesture that Prime Minister Bissessar has made for Prime Minister Modi.
Right. Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, your thoughts on the engagement at the leadership level. You mentioned earlier about how the top leadership, the President and Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago are women of Indian origin. Also, we remember the Prasar Bharati Samman of 2025. The President of the Caribbean island was accorded this award. So in that sense, this closer engagement with the top leadership continues.
Yes, I think it's just quite fortuitous and very timely that we have a meeting between our Prime Minister, who has actually seen both the Prime Minister and the President of Trinidad and Tobago being awarded with Prasar Bharati Samman awards in the past. And they're all both women who are very strong in Trinidad, in politics, done very well. They're both lawyers by profession. And that is why they were honored in the first place at the Prasar Bharati Samman Awards. So they would, of course, know India quite well. They would remember their time in India when they were given these awards. And it's a reciprocal gesture that will be shown during the visit, I'm sure, because they will have fond memories of their trips.
Right. And how would these visuals be received in Trinidad and Tobago, as Professor Mishra was also talking about? It's a historic moment also for the people of the Caribbean island nation. The ancestry, the kinship being celebrated and being recognized by leadership on both sides.
Absolutely. I think it's quite a touching moment for many of the descendants of the people who actually landed many years ago as indentured labor, and especially those who remember the Fatal Razak visit of 1845. Some of them would of course have that family history of their families going back to India from time to time, etc. Many of them will not have that, but this will rekindle those ties. Those who've descended from those 143,000 odd people who landed as indentured labor in Trinidad and Tobago from India over the years would definitely feel very proud that there is a connection, which is a huge connection this time, in the form of the visit of the Prime Minister of India. And once again, I recall listening to the Foreign Minister of Trinidad, Mr. Sobers, earlier this morning, when he was talking about how this visit for his country is a big deal because it connects the two countries culturally, historically, and of course in the present day times economically and investment wise. But what is most important is the sentiment behind the visit.
And there are some updates are coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Trinidad and Tobago for a two-day official visit. In those visuals, Prime Minister Narendra Modi being received by the Prime Minister of Kamala, Persad-Bissessar. And now we are looking at the ceremonial welcome shots. Prime Minister Narendra Modi. These shots came in from Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. Those are visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi being recorded. Ceremonial welcome. Visuals of the ceremonial welcome accorded to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Ambassador, what was the point that you were making about the foreign minister's speech and inputs on the significance of this visit of Prime Minister?
When I was talking about that explanation that he was giving about this visit to the national television in Trinidad, and it was an early morning show where he said today is a big day for our country because today we have a very special visit from one of the tallest leaders who's considered very highly in Trinidad and Tobago. And he went on to say that this is not only because India is an important player on the global stage for some years now, member of the G20, nowadays invitee to the G7, but also because of the special linkages that the people of Trinidad and Tobago have with India. And that his visit therefore is a big deal. And that's what I was trying to explain. And he went on to talk about the new opportunities that have arisen as far as Trinidad is concerned with India, which they are very keen to take forward. So we are going to see some important results coming out of this visit.
Right. Professor Rahul Mishra, staying with the visuals of the special welcome that Prime Minister Narendra Modi received at Port of Spain, an Indian Prime Minister being welcomed by the Prime Minister of the island nation who is of Indian descent. There's a shared history of colonialism. We saw the story of indentured labor as well, but this is a historic point. Trinidad Tobago has risen as an economic power in the Caribbean. India, the fourth largest economy in the world. So it's really, in a way, coming of age for people, for the nations of the global south.
Absolutely. It is a proud moment for Indians and Indian community across the world, manifested in this India-Trinidad and Tobago relationship. The sentiments expressed by Prime Minister and the way he has been received by the political leadership of Trinidad and Tobago speaks volumes of how much affection Indian community and the political leadership of Trinidad and Tobago have for India and Indians. So this marks a new beginning in India-Trinidad Tobago relationship, and I'm sure the outcome documents that will come after the visit or at the end of the visit will tell us, will be a testimony of this new warmth in the relationship, new hopes in India and its engagement with the Caribbean region, with Trinidad and Tobago in particular. So a lot really to look forward to.
Right. Ambassador Badba, how do you look at Prime Minister Narendra Modi's personal interest and engagement with the diaspora, whether it's a large country like the United States or a small island nation? Makes it a point to have time to engage with the diaspora members. The story on Girmitias, we also saw how there's an initiative of creating a database for the Girmitias to recognize, to celebrate and to take forward these civilizational linkages that nations share, and Prime Minister's personal investment in it.
So 2 or 3 important points here. Ever since Prime Minister Modi came to power in 2014, he's made it a point to meet and to address the diaspora from India wherever it is possible. And secondly, he makes sure that he gives a message from India, which is a very positive message for the diaspora. Also urges them to play an important role as far as becoming a bridge between India, that country, is concerned. And also talking about their importance as brand ambassadors of India, wherever they are and in their own way contributing to that particular country. That does not matter. But the fact is that he gives them a certain importance, that he makes sure that they are connected with India through various programs that have been started by the Ministry of External Affairs and other ministries now. And at the same time, it's not just the database for the diaspora that was mentioned, but we also now have a diaspora database which is concentrated in, for example, eminent scientists across the world, which can actually contribute to the relationship between India and these countries, and also contribute a lot to the Indian economy and to the knowledge base of India. So from time to time, for example, many of them are called back to give special lectures, for instance, or they are connected with universities. And these programs have helped, along with the Pravasi Bharati Samman Awards, which have been started, and the invitations that are extended to diaspora across the world from time to time, to keep them connected with India as much as possible.
Professor Rahul Mishra, if we look at the other domains of engagement, economic domain of engagement in particular, the close ties, people-to-people ties between the two nations, how does that also reflect in the economic domain? Both nations have the most favored nation category cleared for one another. How has it reflected in the economic engagement ahead?
Well, the economic engagement over past so many years, over past decades, has more or less been consistent. There's not been, I would say it is moving in a very steady manner. But now is the time to inject new energy in India-Trinidad Tobago partnership, looking at new sectors of cooperation, for example, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, ICT in general, but also the telephone technology, service providers to providing these, exporting these cell phones and other things, computers, of course. So overall, I think ICT is a good area where India and Trinidad Tobago could work together. Of course, there is a possibility for India, scope for Indian investors, corporate leaders, to set up hubs in Trinidad and Tobago and make it a kind of a regional hub for India's ICT exports, and also as a hub for services sector. So I think that is one important element that can be added to this partnership. Also, I think, as I mentioned earlier, energy security is something that India and Trinidad and Tobago could work together on, renewable energy, and also trying to make arrangements to see whether Trinidad and Tobago would be interested in working as a partner in the region for India's long-term energy supply securities. So I think an agreement in that regard can be very beneficial for India. Maritime security and exchange of best practices is something that perhaps India and Trinidad and Tobago could work together on, and create perhaps, because now is the day of having minilateral cooperation in across sectors, in regions across the world, and India has been setting up these minilateral initiatives. So perhaps in the Caribbean region as well, having a set of like-minded countries which could work together with India in fostering their cooperation, keeping in mind their shared concerns, could be a good initiative, because we have seen that China has been trying to make inroads in the Caribbean region through the Belt and Road project, through a number of infrastructure investments. So India and Trinidad and Tobago could work together in building regional infrastructure capacities of countries and have more infrastructural investments. So I think that is also a very important area. For Trinidad and Tobago and India, iron and steel sector is very important. Both exports and imports in that sector are significant. So I think a long-term strategy on heavy industries sector is something that India and Trinidad and Tobago could work together. Defense, I think, is important, but at the moment, India's defense partnerships in the Caribbean region are not that significant. So India now trying to establish itself as a defense exporter is something that should be kept in mind while looking at the wider Caribbean region. And there again, Trinidad and Tobago could be a good partner in making India a a prominent defense exporting country.